In 3, 2, 1.
From New York to Hollywood, London to Chicago, over the years I've interviewed some of the biggest stars, gone behind the scenes of the hottest shows, and had rare access to royal insiders. Join me as we open the WFTV archives and take a step back in time. This is the Video Vault. Hi, I'm Martie Salt. In 1991, I co-produced and hosted a special program on child stars from the 1960s and how their lives changed after Hollywood. The show was called Screen Gems, and it won an Emmy. We're going to show it to you pretty much as it first aired on WFTV in 1991, plus a few extras from today. So let's open the Video Vault. Here's Screen Gems.
Chip, did you throw a baseball through a window or something?
Dennis, you have no business using the air from my tire to fill your balloon.
Oh, Timmy, take that puppy off the table.
Tabitha, you didn't put quite enough zip in that zap.
They are names and faces we'll never forget. These children became part of our families every night as we tuned in to see what would happen next in their TV world. Hi, I'm Martie Salt, and those of us who grew up in the 1960s loved watching those kids on television. First of all, we thought they were extremely lucky. Secondly, we may have thought that somehow these kids were getting a head start on life the rest of us weren't getting. Well, during the next half hour, we're going to revisit some of these child stars and find out what happened to them after the spotlight faded.
My Three Sons. Family affair.
Remember 1960? Maybe your kitchen looks something like this one. The folks who put together this kitchen at the Primetime Cafe at Disney MGM Studios theme park could have been 60s kids too, because they knew exactly what to get. And the most important item in that house, at least to the kids, was this black and white TV set. So let's turn on the tube and see what was making news in 1960.
I'm gonna stick like glue.
What happened in 1960? That was the year Elvis Presley came home from the Army, and he was welcomed back by another former teen idol, Frank Sinatra. It would be 21 years before the royal wedding of Charles and Diana, so this royal wedding captured the world's attention. Britain's Princess Margaret and Anthony Armstrong Jones. While the Jones were saying, "I do," the word in the White House was "you too," as in spy plane, which was shot down over the Soviet Union. The pilot, Gary Francis Powers, survived. The U-2 incident proved to be the most embarrassing of the Eisenhower administration, and that was soon replaced by the Kennedy administration. In 1960, John F. Kennedy narrowly defeated Richard Nixon to become the youngest and first Catholic president ever elected. 1960 was also the year that CBS premiered a new show that would last the entire decade and then some. It featured a single widowed father and 3 boys. My Three Sons began with Mike, Chip, and Robbie. Mike was later replaced with Ernie. Chip and Ernie were actually real-life brothers, Stan and Barry Livingston.
My Three Sons.
I didn't throw a baseball through any window. And Robbie's fine, Mike's fine, so is Bob.
Stan Livingston was just 10 years old in 1960 when he got the role of Chip Douglas on My Three Sons. But by that time, he'd already been acting 5 years, appearing on Ozzie and Harriet and other programs. When My Three Sons was canceled in 1972, Stan was 22. Were you at all Chip yourself?
I suppose parts of me were, but no, I was probably a little wilder than Chip.
Chip Douglas did not experiment with drugs. Stan admits he did. He's 40 now, divorced, and lives alone in a modest Los Angeles home. His hobby is painting on glass. He has a 21-year-old daughter at college. He earned a college degree, too, and for the most part, gave up acting in the late 70s. For a living, he says he's writing and directing some video productions and is hoping to sell a screenplay. Did you have a hard time making the transition from being a star of a hit series, and then at age 22 the series ended, and then you're having to look for work now? Was that a hard transition for you?
Some of the hardest areas is when you finish a show like My Three Sons and you are popular. You really find out who your real friends are. I suppose your own ego in certain ways needs the gratification of people coming up to you and saying, oh, gee, weren't you this guy on My Three Sons? And you still get that to some extent, but I think as you mature and you want to do other things in the business, what you really find out is that's not really all that important. That's sort of a byproduct of the business, and the only thing that's really important is the work itself.
Boy, what a crazy-looking sign.
No, it isn't. I spelled everything okay.
In 1963, Stan's younger brother Barry joined the ranks of working kids. He was 10 years old when he was first introduced on My Three Sons as Chip's friend next door. Barry says his career began when Stan was first discovered taking swimming lessons.
The producer saw this and came to there, and he hired my brother actually to drown for John Provost, I guess it was, in the Lassie series. He was supposed to almost, fall in a lake and almost drown. Well, he couldn't swim, so they came to the school and they got my brother, and he got his first job. And then I just kind of tagged along with him, and we got an agent, and one thing led to another.
With his glasses and buck teeth, Barry says he was always cast as the orphan or runaway. That's how the character of Ernie began, but he was later adopted by Steve Douglas, played by Fred McMurray, whom Barry says was always nice, but always professional and reserved.
It wasn't like Bill Bixby and Brandon Cruz, who, apparently Bill Bixby would take him on skiing vacations with him, You all weren't doing that. Fred never took me to the commissary, let alone a skiing vacation, so...
When My Three Sons went off the air in 1972, Barry had straightened his teeth, gotten contact lenses, and had a different look. He's played on Broadway, guest starred on TV shows. Now he writes and directs plays, sometimes performs with Stan. Just last year, he received the Critics' Choice Award from the Los Angeles Times for his most recent play, Meet Dreams. He's been married 10 years and has an 18-month-old son. For a Hollywood kid, he seems pretty normal.
My adjustment into my adult life, which is the problem that so many child actors have, was made a lot easier because my parents were always stressing that there's no free rides, and you're successful as a child now, but if you want to remain an actor in your life, you've got to go and study and work and approach it like a real craft.
Other kids, I think their family lives may have been screwed up, or the attention of their parents, or their parents are so into their kids being celebrities that they become celebrities and start living their life through the eyes of their kids and just lose all, grasp on reality.
If you think any of the child stars you'll meet this half hour are living off investments or royalties, think again. None of them gets a dime from reruns. Stan and Barry did use part of their earnings to help buy their homes. Do you remember what you got paid to do it?
Oh, geez, not much. I'll tell you, they didn't.
What's not much?
Oh, I think in those days, it was probably $250 a show, $400 a show. Maybe.
Do you remember what you got paid?
Do I remember? Not enough.
A few $100s a week is nothing compared to the thousands that many kid stars make today. But for the 1960s, that was a lot of money. Still, according to Walt Disney Studios, this is how the salary of a child actor working on a TV series in California is likely distributed. 25 to 30% is usually set aside in a trust fund the child can't touch until he's 18. 10% goes to an agent, 15% to a manager, and he still has to pay Social Security, federal, and state income taxes. So the child could be making $10,000 a week and come home with only 10 to 20% of that. That's why Stan and Barry Livingston are not living off the money earned when they were children. And the other son, Don Grady, who played Robbie, is now a musical director for Disney. And Stan says another actor was originally set to play the role of Robbie, but Fred McMurray decided he wasn't right for it at the last minute. Who was it? Ryan O'Neal. In 1964, a sitcom about a pretty witch married to a mortal husband debuted. Bewitched quickly became an instant hit and ran directly opposite My Three Sons. In 1966, the character of Samantha had a baby girl. Producers used a number of little girls for the role until they eventually settled on Erin Murphy. Erin played the role of Tabitha Stevens until 1972. By the time Erin Murphy actually had lines on Bewitched, she'd already been on the show at least a year. She started when she was 1 1/2 and says she got the part because even at 1 1/2, She was considered a show business veteran.
Well, supposedly I was an experienced actress since I'd done one commercial already. I did a commercial with Ronald Reagan when I was 11 months old.
Well, now, how do you expect to grow up to be a nice, plump Tabitha Pie if you don't eat?
I don't want to be a fat pie. I want to be a nice skinny witch like my mommy.
Erin spent nearly 7 years on Bewitched. She started school on the set. At 8, the show ended, and so did her full-time job. Except for some modeling and a few commercials, she got out of the business and later used some of the money she'd earned for school.
Went to college, got married, had 2 children, moved to Arizona and bought a ranch, and was teaching acting and doing different things out there, working with casting agents on the Desperado movies.
Now at 26 years old, she's a single parent of 2 and back in Los Angeles hoping to break back into the business as an actress. Her memories of her years as a child actress are good.
It's a lot of work, and it's not really good for some kids. I mean, I had a great experience, and I never had problems with rejection at interviews. It was like, if you don't get the part, one of your friends gets the part, because you get to know all the people who audition at the same times as you. But I've seen a lot of kids where it's hard for a little kid to be told that they're not as cute as the next one or whatever.
By the way, Erin has a fraternal twin sister, Diane, who is occasionally used in Bewitched to play the role of Tabitha's friend. And while Barry and Stan Livingston and Erin all have pleasant memories of their experiences as child actors, the same can't be said for others. When we continue our look at Screen Gems, we'll hear from Paul Peterson of The Donna Reed Show, Johnny Whitaker of Family Affair, and Jay North, who says he hated every minute he played Dennis the Menace. But first, look at what the highest rated shows were in 1964.
The Video Vault continues with Martie Salt.
Jay North played the lovable but mischievous Dennis the Menace from 1959 to 1963. But the character we saw on TV was far different from the life Jay led off-screen. 40 years old now, North says those were the worst years of his life. On a recent Geraldo show, North described a childhood of physical and mental abuse at the hands of his aunt and uncle who managed his career.
From age 7 to 11, she would actually lay her hands on you?
Exactly. She beat me, physically assaulted me. There were times when she told me that if I took more than 2 takes to get a scene, she would beat me, and she did.
And there are other young people who've run into trouble since their primetime shows. Some of them have made headlines just since we began working on this special. Dana Plato and Todd Bridges of Different Strokes have both been in trouble with the law. Plato's accused of robbing a video store. Bridges was tried and acquitted of manslaughter charges. Danny Bonaducci of the Partridge Family has faced drug charges and just a few weeks ago was arrested for assault and robbery of a transvestite prostitute. And the adorable Lauren Chapin, Kitten, from Father Knows Best, says she became a prostitute to pay for her heroin habit and was eventually committed for a time to a mental hospital. This next story is about a little boy who was a very successful child actor in the 60s and 70s, but somehow managed to keep it all in perspective. His red-headed, curly-topped co-star was not as lucky. Johnny Whitaker and Anissa Jones played Jody and Buffy Davis on Family Affair from 1966 to 1971. Johnny is 31 years old now. He's back in Los Angeles and goes by John Whitaker.
Family Affair.
Every boy can be president, can be president, can be president.
It was really a twist of fate that Johnny Whitaker even won the part of Jody on Family Affair. The script called for a 10-year-old boy. Johnny was only 6, but his agent still encouraged him to go to the audition.
Anyway, I got there. I was the only 6-year-old boy there, and they had all these other 10-year-old boys, so I thought, I'm in the wrong place. But when they looked at Anissa Jones and myself, they said, the scripts have been changed, it's going to be twins.
It's been 20 years since Family Affair. Now John lives in a small, one-bedroom Hollywood house where he works as a computer consultant, speaking 5 languages.
Está. Alô, tudo bem?
But he still hopes to professionally act again.
Certain people in Hollywood already say, oh, we know who he is, no thank you. you know, I'm sorry, they don't know who I am. They haven't seen me. They don't know who I am. Somebody changes in 10 years.
When Family Affair ended in 1971, Johnny was one of the busiest child actors in Hollywood. He made Tom Sawyer, had his own TV series for a while. Then in 1976, Anissa Jones, known to millions as Buffy, died of drugs and alcohol. Johnny was 16 and devastated.
I was shocked. I was scared. Definitely overcome by fear of, can this happen to me? Or is this possible? I've come to know and come to recognize since that I was very, very blessed with a wonderful family. I'm one of 8 children. I've got 2 parents who are very wonderful. They'll be married 40 years the end of this year. They are very stable and a very stable influence in my life.
Anissa's death prompted John to stop acting. A Mormon, he spent 2 years as a missionary in Portugal. He eventually graduated from Brigham Young University in Utah. He married, he divorced, and he moved back to Los Angeles, where he's hoping to gain the resources to form his own production company. And the death of yet another former child actor prompted Paul Peterson to do something. Paul played Jeff Stone on The Donna Reed Show for 8 years. He launched a crusade against children even being allowed in show business and especially pursued it following the suicide of 43-year-old Rusty Hamer last year. Rusty played Danny Thomas's son on Make Room for Daddy.
I got it! Smitty was right. I am a genius. And I get it all from my mother.
Paul Peterson played the all-American teenage son of Donna Reed from 1958 when he was 12 until 1966. During that time, he and Shelley Fabre, who played his sister, even made records. He sold 3 million. By the last year of the Donna Reed Show, Paul, at 20 years old, was making about $200,000 a year. That's in 1966. But the easy money was over. The few parts he did get after the show were Jeff Stone-type roles.
And I was had the foolish notion that, you know, after 3 million records and all those years as a working actor, that I could have a career in this industry. Didn't happen.
So Paul got out of L.A., moved to Connecticut for 10 years, and wrote a series of adventure books. He moved back to Los Angeles in the late 70s, and for another 10 years had a limousine service. Now he's married to his 3rd wife, Rana. He has 3 children from previous marriages. He travels for the Nickelodeon channel, which airs Donna Reed reruns, and he tells people not to put their kids in show business.
And you see, it begins with the parents. Parents who take their children on interviews are putting their kids up for sale. That's exactly what they're doing. And for most, failure looms.
Is there a victimization that sometimes happens?
Absolutely. And the more famous you are, the worse the problems are. It is, I mean, it's been Hollywood tradition for 80 years. We didn't grow up in a vacuum. We grew up in a very funny town that ignores the problems that it creates for young people. And
he's often asked to appear on talk shows. And in Los Angeles, he has a support group for kid actors in trouble and says he gets calls at least twice a week about situations on current television productions.
I didn't used to intervene. I would just kind of collect the stories, you know, I and my friends who shared this odd background. But since Rusty Hamer killed himself a year ago, I said, that's it. I'm not ever going to hear about another kid in trouble. And I don't mean just kids chronologically. Rusty was in his 40s. I'm not ever going to let that trouble pass by me again. I'm going to get in there and do something.
In just a minute, whatever happened to some of the rest of the kids you used to watch? Little Ricky from I Love Lucy, Timmy on Lassie, and the kids from Lost in Space. We'll show you in a moment, but first, take a look at what the top-rated shows were for 1962.
We're going back into the video vault with Martie Salt. The year, 1991.
I Love Lucy was one of my all-time favorites, still is. The little boy who played Little Ricky was Keith Thibodeau. Right now, here's a look at what he's doing along with some other kid stars. Keith Thibodeau is 40 now, married with a 9-year-old daughter. For several years, he was a member of a Christian rock band. Now he says he's taken time off to travel with his wife's dance company. Angela Cartwright played Penny on Lost in Space. Before that, she was on Make Room for Daddy and was one of the Von Trapp children in The Sound of Music. She's 38 now, owns a Los Angeles area boutique called Rubber Boots. Her Lost in Space co-star, Billy MUMY, still acts and performs with a band. John Provost was Timmy on the original Lassie. Now he's a San Francisco area real estate agent, married with 2 children. We mentioned Lauren Chapin of Father Knows Best earlier. After years of battling a drug addiction and serving jail time, Lauren is now living in Orlando. The single mother of 2, she says her life turned around when she became a born-again Christian, and now she works with a local ministry.
Here's the story of a lovely lady.
And Susan Olsen played the ponytailed Cindy on The Brady Bunch. At 29, she lives in Los Angeles, works as a graphic artist, and still acts occasionally. We want to thank you for watching, and thanks to Disney MGM Studios Theme Park for allowing us to relive some memories here at the Primetime Cafe. Good night.
As we see in the headlines today, child stars struggle with similar issues as those kids did decades ago. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look back. It's time to close the video vault for now. Until next time, I'm Martie Salt, signing off.